Assalamu alaikum. Hello everybody. My dear students at Port Said University Faculty of Commerce English program, this is our course Organizational Behavior, and this course is for the first grade. In this lecture we are going to complete the 5th chapter in our course, chapter 5 entitled Motivation and Rewards. So, this chapter entitled Motivation and Rewards. And as you remember, we have started this chapter at the previous lecture. So now we are going to complete this chapter. Learning objectives. After reading the current chapter, you will be able to do the following. Understand the role of motivation in determining employee performance. Explain how employees are motivated according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Explain how the ERG theory, existence, relatedness, growth theory, addresses the limitations of Maslow's hierarchy. Explain how employees evaluate the fairness of reward distributions. The last objective is describe how managers can use the reinforcement principles to motivate their employees. And you remember that in the previous lecture we have learned about preface and then performance equation, and we have started to discuss the theories of motivation, and we finished the need-based theories of motivation. And as you know, we discussed two theories. The first one was Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the second one was ERG theory. As the first category of theories of motivation, the second category of the theories of motivation is process-based theories. Process-based theories. Indeed, a stream of research views motivation as something more than action aimed at satisfying a need. Instead, process-based theories view motivation as a rational process. So, the concept here is that the motivation is not an specific action, is not an specific event. Instead, the motivation is like a process, is like a case. So, individuals analyze their environment, develop thoughts and feelings, and react in certain ways. Process theories attempt to explain the thought processes of individuals who demonstrate motivated behavior. So, under this category, we will review equity theory and reinforcement theory. In this category, we will study the equity theory and the reinforcement theory. Equity theory. Let me tell you this story in order to understand the equity theory. Imagine that you are paid $10 an hour working as an office assistant. So, assume that you are working as an office assistant and you get paid $10 per hour. You have held this job for 6 months. You are very good at what you do. You come up with creative ways to make things easier around you. And you are a good colleague who is willing to help others. You stay late at the job when necessary, and you are flexible if requested to change hours. So, you can say that you are the optimal employee in this job. Now imagine that you found out they are hiring another employee who is going to work with you. This person will hold the same job title, and this person will perform the same type of tasks as you do. This particular person has more advanced computer skills, but it's unclear whether these will be used on the job or not. The starting pay for this person will be $14 an hour. So, you are optimal employee in this job, and the new entrant will get paid $14 per hour, and he will do the same tasks like you. So, how would you feel in this situation? Would you be as motivated as before, going above and beyond your duties? How would you describe what you would be feeling? If your reaction in this scenario, if your reaction to this scenario is along the lines of this would be unfair, so your behavior may be explained using equity theory. According to this theory, individuals are motivated by sense of fairness in their interactions. Moreover, our sense of fairness is a result of the social comparisons we make. Specifically, we compare our inputs and outputs with other people's inputs and outputs. So, according to the equity theory, الموتيفيشن بيحصل للشخص نتيجة إحساسه بالفيرنس، نتيجة إحساسه بالإكويتي. الشخص بيبدأ يشعر بالإكويتي أو الإكويتي إزاي؟ بيبدأ يحسب ريشيو للأوتكمز divided by الانبوتس الخاصة بالشخص، ويشوف إلى أي مدى will be equal to الأوتكمز divided by الانبوتس for the referent person للشخص المرجعي أو الشخص اللي هو بيقارن بيه. According to this formula. So, the equity theory formula, person outcomes divided by person inputs will equal to referent outcomes divided by referent inputs. We perceive fairness if we believe that the input to outcome ratio we are bringing into the situation is similar to the input to outcomes ratio of a comparison person or a referent in this case. Perceptions of inequity create tension and strain. الإحساس بعدم العدالة بيخلق tension and strain within us and drive us to action that will reduce perceived inequity. ويبدأ الشخص يتخذ مجموعة من الأكشنز أو الرياكشنز ردود الفعل اللي تقلل من perceived inequity من شعوره بعدم العدالة as we will discuss later. What are inputs and outputs? يا ترى إيه هي الانبوتس والoutputs? What are inputs and outputs? Inputs are the contributions people feel they are making to the environment or to the organization. In our example, in the previous example, the person's hard work, reality to the organization, the amount of time with the organization and level of education, training, and skills may have been relevant inputs. The outcomes are the perceived rewards someone can receive from the situation. For the hourly wage employee in our example, the $10 an hour pay rate was a core outcome. There may also be other more referral outcomes, such as acknowledgement or preferential treatment from a manager. يبقى في نوع آخر من outputs more referral outcomes ممكن يكون زي acknowledgement or preferential treatment from the manager. Who is the referent? مين هو الريفرنت أو comparison person؟ الشخص المرجعي أو الشخص اللي بيتم المقارنة به. The referent may be a specific person as well as a category of people. Reference should be comparable to us. Otherwise, the comparison will be not meaningful. It would be pointless or meaningless for a student worker to compare himself to the chief executive officer of the company. يبقى لازم يكون الشخص comparable to us، لازم يكون شخص مناسب للمقارنة علشان تكون المقارنة meaningful. Reactions to unfairness. Reactions to unfairness. Indeed, according to the equity theory, there are many reactions that the employee or the person can take in case of feeling unfairness. The theory outlines several potential reactions to perceived inequity. Oftentimes, the situation may be dealt with perceptually by altering our perceptions of our own or the reference inputs and outputs. For example, the current incumbent will try to find an explanation that the situation is fair and equity. He will try to find an explanation to believe that the situation is fair and equity. Otherwise, he may take action, whether ethically or not, in order to the feeling of equity and fair. The manager and organization also play an important role in the feeling of equity. Indeed, the current incumbent will try to find a way to feel with the equity. The potential responses to inequity are shown at Exhibit 5.8. So, let's have a look for the Exhibit 5.8 or the Table 5.8 in order to review the potential responses to inequity. For example, at the left hand, you will find this row, reactions to inequity, and there are examples for this reaction. So, the first reaction, reduce own input. So, in order to feel equity, the employee or the person, the current incumbent, will try to reduce his own input. Like, for example, changing one's thinking to believe that he doesn't really work very hard on this job, or deliberately putting less his effort at work, or deliberately reducing the quality of his work. بمعنى يحاول يقنع نفسه انه ما بيأديش عمل صعب قوي، وبالتالي الاوتبوتس اللي بيحصل عليها ده كويسه قوي والموضوع فير بالنسبه له. او ان هو يحاول بشكل متعمد يقلل المجهود اللي بيبذله في العمل، او يحاول بشكل متعمد ان هو يقلل الكواليتي المرتبطه بالتاسكس او البرودكتس اللي هو بيعملها. Second reaction, increase own outcomes. Valuing his outcomes more highly, for example, believing that he gains valuable work experiences, or negotiating to raise his benefits, or using unethical ways of increasing rewards, for example, stealing from the company. أو ممكن يعمل رياكشن إن هو يعمل increase own outcomes، يعني يحاول يحصل على مخرجات أكتر. For example، يحاول يقنع نفسه إن هو بيحصل على مخرجات تانية مهمة وذات قيمة. For example، دي experiences اللي بيحصل عليها من العمل دي أيضا ليها قيمة. أو إن هو يتفاوض من أجل إنه يعظم المنافع بتاعته، ولو ما قدرش يتفاوض في الحالة دي ممكن يلجأ ل unethical ways، لطرق غير أخلاقية. For example، stealing from the company. Third reaction is increase the reference inputs. إن هو يحاول يزود الانبوتس الخاصة بالريفرنت علشان يقدر يقنع نفسه إن situation fair بالنسبة له. Changing one's thinking to believe that the referent actually is more skilled than previously thought. أو encouraging the referent to work harder. يقنع نفسه إن فعلا الريفرنت ده شخص skilled، شخص educated كويس قوي، وبالتالي يستحق الاوتكمز أو الاوتبوتس اللي هو بيحصل عليها. أو يحصل encouraging the referent to work harder، وده بيكون دور السوبرفايزر أو دور المانجر أو دور الأورجنايزيشن، إنها تقدر تشجع الريفرنت بيرسون تو ورك هاردر انه يعمل شغل اصعب، وبالتالي يبان للبيرسون ان الوضع بالنسبه له فير، شخص بيشتغل اكتر وبياخد عائد اكتر، فده اتس سو فير. ايضا the next reaction may be change the referent. change referent او change the comparison person. Comparing oneself to someone who is worse off. Changing the comparison person. إنه يقارن نفسه بحد يكون أسوأ من وضعه، أو يقارن نفسه أو يغير الشخص اللي هو بيقارن نفسه بيه. Seek legal action. The next reaction is seek legal action. Suing the company or filing a complaint if this unfairness is under legal protection. For example, in case of discrimination of gender-related compensations, he can sue the company or filing a complaint if this unfairness is under legal protection. The last reaction is leave the situation, like quitting one's job. Quitting one's job إنه يترك المنظمة بالكامل أو يترك الوظيفة بالكامل لأنه بيشعر بالunfairness. So, for overpayment inequity. In the previous situation, we were talk about the underpayment inequity. شخص بيحصل على أقل مما يجب وبالتالي بيشعر بالinequity أو unfairness. But في نوع آخر من inequity اسمه overpayment inequity. What would you do if you felt you were over-rewarded? In other words, how would you feel if you were the new employee in the previously mentioned scenario? Originally, equity theory proposed that over-rewarded individuals would experience guilt and would increase their effort to bring back the perceptions of equity. الأشخاص اللي بياخدوا over-rewarded اللي بياخدوا أكتر من اللازم هيشعروا بالذنب وهيحاولوا إن هم يوصلوا لدرجة الإيكويتي أو العدالة. لكن في الحقيقة indeed research does not provide support for this argument. Instead, it seems that individuals experiences less distress as a result of being over-rewarded. It is not hard to imagine that individuals find perceptual ways to deal with a situation like this, such as believing they have more skills and bring more to the situation compared to the referent person. سهل إن الأشخاص يخلقوا لنفسهم تصور إن هم skilled، إن هم educated، متعلمين كويس، إن هم مهاراتهم أفضل، إن هم أحسن من غيرهم، وبالتالي بيشعروا بالرضا عن نفسهم أو بالإيكويتي إن هم over-rewarded، إن هم بياخدوا أكتر من غيرهم. علشان كده therefore research does not support the equity theories predictions with respect to people who are overpaid. Research does not support the equity theories predictions with respect to people who are overpaid or over-rewarded. The second theory in the process-based theories for the motivation is reinforcement theory. Reinforcement theory. The reinforcement theory is based on the work of the Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov on the behavioral conditioning and the later work of the American psychologist Horace Frederick Skinner on the operant conditioning. And in according to the reinforcement theory, the behavior is a function of its outcomes. So according to the reinforcement theory, the behavior will be as a function of its outcomes. And in this point, let us make a simple review. According to Maslow's hierarchy needs, the behavior will be driven by needs. And these needs, according to Maslow, are hierarchically organized. And there are 5 groups of needs. And these needs, as I told you, are hierarchically organized. According to the erg theory, there are 3 groups of needs: existence, relatedness, and growth. And these needs are not hierarchically organized as assumed by Maslow. In the equity theory, the behavior of the employee will be driven by the equity formula. In the equity formula, the employee will try to calculate the outputs to inputs ratio for himself and will compare this ratio for the same ratio for another one called referent person or comparison person. According to reinforcement theory that we will talk about now, the behavior is driven by the outcomes allocated for the behavior. Imagine that, so there is an example and a small story to understand this theory. Imagine that even though no one asked you to do that, you have stayed late and drafted a report. When the manager found out, she was joyful and thanked you sincerely. The consequences following your good work were favorable, and therefore you are more likely to demonstrate similar behaviors in the future. In other words, your initiative was reinforced. So you will do the similar behaviors in the future. Otherwise, if your manager had said nothing about it and everyone ignored the sacrifice you made, so you are less likely to demonstrate similar behaviors in the future. So if your behavior gets reinforced, you will repeat these behaviors in the future. Otherwise, if your behaviors get ignored or criticized, you will not repeat these behaviors in the future. So, despite the simplicity of reinforcement, you can find very strange things in the reality. For example, how many times have you seen positive behavior ignored? Many times. Of course, many times. Or at worst, how many times have you seen negative behavior rewarded? Sometimes we can see that. So, unfortunately, in many organizations, this is a familiar scenario. For example, a company may make public statements about the importance of quality. However, if they choose to reward shipments on time regardless of the amount of defects contained in the shipments, employees are more likely to ignore quality and focus on hurrying the delivery process in order to get rewarded. So, the company may say something and reward persons based on something else. So the persons, your employees, will do this another thing in order to get rewarded, like this example. So the employees are more likely to ignore quality and focus on hurrying the delivery process in order to get rewarded. Actually, because people learn to repeat their behaviors based on the consequences following their prior activities, managers will need to systematically examine the consequences of employee behavior and make interventions when be needed. So, the managers, according to the reinforcement theory, will try to make interventions in order to reinforce the behaviors of their employees. Reinforcement interventions. The reinforcement theory describes 4 interventions to modify employee behavior. 2 of these are methods of increasing the frequency of desired behaviors, while the remaining 2 are methods of reducing the frequency of undesired behavior. يبقى في 2 من الانترفنشنز بيكونوا علشان نزود الفريكونسي of desired behaviors، والاثنين الآخرين بيكونوا علشان نقدر نعمل reducing the frequency of undesired or unwanted behaviors. First, positive reinforcement. The positive reinforcement is a method of increasing the desired behavior. Positive reinforcement involves making sure that behavior is met with positive consequences. For example, praising an employee for treating a customer respectfully is an example of positive reinforcement. So, if there is an employee and this person treated a customer respectfully and you praise this behavior, so this is a kind of positive reinforcement. If the praise immediately follows the positive behavior, and this is the best thing, the best case, if the praise immediately follows the positive behavior, the employee will see link between the behavior and the positive consequences and will be motivated to repeat similar behaviors in the future. The second intervention is negative reinforcement. The negative reinforcement also used to increase the desired behavior. So how can we use this intervention to increase the desired behavior? Negative reinforcement involves the removal of unpleasant outcomes once the desired behavior is demonstrated. So negative reinforcement meaning the removal of unpleasant outcomes once the desired behavior is demonstrated. For example, constantly warning an employee to complete a report is an example of negative reinforcement. دايما تحذر، دايما تخوف الموظف اللي عندك علشان خاطر to complete a report، انه يخلص report. This is an example of negative reinforcement، لانه بمجرد ما هيخلص التقرير المطلوب منه خلاص التحذير هينتهي. This is kind of negative reinforcement. But you have to know that the negative stimulus in the environment will remain present until positive behavior is demonstrated. The problem with negative reinforcement is that the negative stimulus may lead to unexpected behaviors and may fail to stimulate the desired behavior. For example, the person may start avoiding the manager to avoid being annoyed. إن دايما هيظل القلق موجود في مكان العمل نتيجة استخدام النيجاتيف reinforcement، وممكن ده يؤدي أن may fail to stimulate the desired behavior، لأن الموظف ممكن يضطر أن هو يتعمد ما يقابلش المدير، ما يتعاملش مع المدير to avoid being annoyed. The third intervention, extinction. Extinction is used to decrease the frequency of negative behaviors. Extinction is the removal of rewards following negative behavior. Removal of rewards following negative behavior. وهنا extinction معناها التوقف عن مكافأة السلوك السيء. So, sometimes negative behaviors are demonstrated. Sometimes negative behaviors are demonstrated because they are being inadvertently rewarded. For example, it has been shown that when people are rewarded for their unethical behaviors, they tend to demonstrate higher levels of unethical behaviors. So, it's logically. Thus, when the rewards following unwanted behaviors are removed and stopped, the frequency of future negative behaviors may be reduced. For example, if a coworker is forwarding email messages containing jokes, commenting and laughing at these jokes may be encouraging the person to keep forwarding these messages in the future. But completely ignoring such messages may reduce their frequency in the future. لو في أحد الموظفين بيحاول إنه يعمل فورورد للمسجز اللي بتتضمن جوكس، نكات، بعض الأشياء لبقية زمايله ويعطل زمايله، الإهمال الكامل لحاجة زي دي ده هيكون دافع للشخص إن هو يتوقف. ده الاكستنشن، ده اللي هو التوقف عن مكافأة السلوك السيء. ان لو في احد الامبلويز الموجودين في مكان العمل وبيتعمد ان هو يعمل سلوك unethical او سلوك undesired، سلوك مش مرغوب، الاهمال الكامل او المتعمد according to this theory هيكون كافي ان الشخص ده to modify his behavior in the future or to stop doing this unwanted behavior in the future. The fourth and last interventions that can managers do according to the reinforcement theory is the punishment. Punishment العقاب على السلوك السيء. يعني احنا قلنا ان اتنين مرتبطين بزيادة السلوك الإيجابي هما البوزيتيف reinforcement والنيجاتيف reinforcement، وفي اتنين مرتبطين بتقليل السلوك السيء أو السلوك unwanted أو undesired behavior. أول حاجة كان الاكستنشن والتاني كان البانشمنت. Punishment is another method of reducing the frequency of undesirable behaviors. Punishment involves presenting negative consequences following unwanted behaviors. Giving an employee a warning for consistently being late to work is an example of the punishment. Deduction from the salary or delaying the promotion is another example of punishment. تحذير الموظف انه ما يتاخرش تاني، تهديده انه ما يتاخرش تاني، واذا اتاخر هيتعاقب. deduction from the salary الخصم من المرتب and the delaying the promotion وتاجيل الترقيه الخاصه بالموظف، ده كله types او kinds of punishment، انواع للبانشمنتس للعقاب اللي ممكن يقع على مين؟ على الامبلوي. So by the end of this lecture, hope all is going well with you and see you soon. All the best. Thanks so much.